Welcome to the Week in Italian Startup, where we discuss the latest highlights happening in the Italian tech and investment ecosystem. Welcome everyone to the Week in Italian Startup, first episode of 2023. Welcome, Nick.
Ciao, Jack. Welcome everybody and Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Absolutely. All right, let's get started by considering maybe the first week, and then we are going to consider last week in particular. So let's get going. Basically, one of the first big raise of the first week of 2023 is Eggtronic, hardware startup raising 12 million in Series B. This is a round led by Wrinkelberg Capital and our participation of CDPVC and Doorway. So that's one of the biggest fundraise for the first week of this year. What are your thoughts, Nick?
Yeah. To say the truth, this is one of the latest fundraise from last year. So let's call it a deal between end of year and beginning of new year. It's an interesting deal because it is a hardware startup, and there are not many hardware startups in Italy raising a sizable round, $12 million out of 20. So they had a goal of raising up to 20. And the interesting bit is the lead investor that is by Crunchbase, as smallish, I would say, by the number of rounds raised to date, invested to date, a smallish London-based in family office focused on seed and early stage investments. So that's another interesting bit from this operation.
Awesome. Yeah, I would then, other thing happened in terms of fundraise. I want to highlight just a few of them, actually focusing on the latest, the first closing of 150 million of P103 from the team that brings you P101. So congrats to the guys. That's one of the latest fund. These guys are definitely moving fast and growing the company. So that's definitely worth mentioning.
Yep. I believe they are currently managing more than $500 million.
Wow.
Thanks to the latest fund. So this
Awesome.
is the fourth, despite the name. So they raised P101, P102, Italia 500. That was a fund raised with Azimut, our friends at Azimut.
Oh yeah.
And P103. So congrats to the team for the fundraise. So we have got a new sizable fund for Series A and Series B investments. And I believe their focus will be Italy and Spain, where
Awesome.
they have experience.
So, and now in terms of asset under management, they're one of the biggest in Italy in terms of VC firm, I would say. Well, excluding CDP, excluding of course, our great friend in CDP that, it's VC, but, it's kind of a different kind in a way.
Yeah, let's say private manager.
Yep.
With respect to public manager or state control manager. Anyhow, I believe you're right. And under 50 is the first close. If I'm not wrong, their aim is to raise up to 250 million.
Awesome.
That will make it one of the biggest funds out of Italy in terms of focus on digital in particular, focus on software. So
Fantastic.
good opportunity for our later stage entrepreneur.
Yep. And that's also a segment that was actually a little bit underserved. So that's great news.
Agreed.
Awesome. Let's talk about the IPO happening. One of the first of the year, Eligo, e-commerce startup, went public on the Euronext Growth Milan in the professional segment. So basically, market cap for the IPO is at 13.9 million euro.
Yeah. It was actually probably the last IPO of last year. They probably were admitted on the market on the 28th of December, something along those lines. The interesting bit here, I believe, is that they are another startup going public on the professional segment of the mid-and growth markets. Professional segment basically means that only professional investors are admitted to negotiating the stock. So no retail investors involved. At least in a small buckets, I believe, of 5,000 euros each. It's with a mechanism, not exactly real time, based on real time stock pricing. So it's an interesting way, half and half, between being a private company and a public company from this point of view.
Yeah, there is a certain term of reconciliation of pricing, which happens, I don't know which frequency, but yeah, I agree.
Daily, I believe. Daily.
I think it's daily. I want to say daily. Yeah, and but yeah, it's a nice hybrid system to actually give access for a professional investor to the VC asset class. So definitely interesting.
And if you look at the market cap, it appears as, that's a Series A-ish or late seed-ish type of valuation. So that's an interesting bit, interesting information. So I mean, public markets are the new private markets. I don't know. It seems so for some startups, at least.
Interesting take on that. No, for sure. All right, let's talk about last week. So let's talk about fintech. Everything is happening in fintech, seems. I mean, there are a few interesting points, I would say. And the main point is, seems that last week all banks, some great banks, so they were trying to become platform, or at least they all show like a pattern to platformize, I don't think is a word, but I'm going to say it anyway, themselves by adding elements to their offering. So it's interesting because it seems to me that, banks used to only help people save money. Then there was product, and then the startup became the product. And now it's like reversing back. So banks are kind of eating up all the startup to include the products in their own offering. So it's like this kind of weird cycle going on. So, let's talk about Banca Valsabbina. We talked about Banca Valsabbina like many times. One of the rather smallest bank in Italy, but definitely one of the most active in terms of innovation and approach to venture capital and investing actually in startups. So just as a quick reminder, I just pulled up like the different acquisition that they made starting 2021. So let me just give a rundown of the major one. In 2021, they basically invested in My Credit Service, which is an invoice management and trading startup. In 2022, last year, they did a few operations. Basically, they invested in Change Capital, which is a quick loan for small company startup. Still in 2022, they were working on embedded finance with a logistic operator to actually include financial services into the logistics supply chain, which is pretty interesting. It's a play that is considered embedded in the sense that kind of throwing financial product in companies and in product that are not necessarily or strictly financial. So I thought it was particularly, very looking forward from their part. And always in 2022, they acquired 9% of Upstart, which is a crowdfunding platform, which it's not limited to equity crowdfunding. They do a lot of other stuff, including peer-to-peer lending. And all of that to say that the build-up is up to basically now, where Banca Valsabbina acquired 10% of Nyp, which works in credit collection from the public sector, which I thought it was a very interesting take. It looks like the company kind of just started shaping the product. It looks like it's a shoot off of a company that does like a credit collection from public institution on behalf of private companies. So there is some movement there. And Banca Valsabbina is betting on that. Big portfolio, different games, definitely different bets. well done to the team. I mean, they definitely are all over in some of the major fintech trends.
Yep. I think the other interesting bits from the deal is that Nyp Techfin is actually part of a group. Is a part of this collection group. Mm-hmm. So it is not a standalone company, or so it seems. And as you said, they are very early. So, I mean, common sense might bring you to think that the bank would, invest or acquire something that has some validation on the market. In this case, it seems the company is quite early with, the development of the product. So that's another interesting data point on this. And it is probably not the first time that they invest this early. I think with the blockchain platform they invested in, maybe
good point.
They were very early as well. So that's a very, very, very interesting portfolio. Portfolio strategy from the bank.
Totally.
Quite unusual.
We need to, call them up and see what's the deal with this strategy.
What's going on?
Super interesting. All right. By the same token, let's talk about Unicredit and Credimi. So Credimi is very interesting news. Credimi is basically a fintech startup that allows small and medium enterprise in Italy to borrow money for their operation. It's been very interesting because they gained a lot of popularity in the past, I would say 4 years. So it was particularly cool because it was a segment that people didn't really take care of. The traditional bank didn't really take care of because of the low interest rates. But now, because of the change in interest rate, now the segment is attractive again. So there you go. You have a lot of sort of contenders of Credimi. So Unicredit, the news is that Unicredit is putting an offer of 20 million to actually buy Credimi. But apparently there are also other banks in line to actually become part of, at least try to buy the company or part of the company. So it's a very interesting dynamic happening over there. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, well, this story is not a success story, probably. I think someone might say buy the company, someone else might say save the company. Just to give you perspective, Credimi raised more than 30 million euros of venture capital. So an acquisition at 20 is less than the capital that was actually employed in the company. So it all started last fall, as there was some public announcements about Credimi in having troubles with their model, their business, and they were looking for some white knights coming in and saving the company. So there was some, public noise about this going on. And Unicredit was one of the first names that was immediately on the table. It seemed they were, they had concrete interest. So they have concrete interest in acquiring Credimi, and they put forward an offer. Let's see if someone else pursues and it becomes, competitive in some way. For sure, if there are liquidation preferences, investors are getting back their money, but the rest, we'll see.
Yeah.
So not a great scenario here.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be at least interesting how it unfolds and how exactly it's going to end up. I also want to point out the declaration from the founder, where he declares that essentially, basically Credimi has a problem in terms of growth. So so far the money was collected through a process of securitization of loan. So essentially the business model, roughly speaking, is that the money is collected from basically selling securities, and then basically they corresponded to the small and medium enterprise. And that's the idea. But that process is a limit. So what they're looking for is actually a bank with a banking license that can actually allow to collect money on different forms and through different financial techniques. So that's really the way that they're thinking of growing. So it's really changing the structure of the money collection mechanism, essentially. So I thought it was particularly interesting because then it's really shows like how they want to evolve the model into a more sophisticated probably model that actually like is closer to a bank than a service provider, than a fintech service provider.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I believe, but I'm not a fintech expert, but I believe that they were hit by interest rates raising in the last few months. That made the previous model unfeasible because they had no access to credit lines, credit products that could be used to securitize the loans. I don't know, but for sure there is some effort there related to how the market changed and the appetite for risk changing on the market.
Interesting.
We see. The story is still unfolding in front of us. So
awesome. Let me also make a comparison between what's happening in Banca Valsabbina and Unicredit. So apparently both founders of both company are advisor to the acquiring bank. So the founder of, I believe, the founder of Nyp used to be a consultant to Banca Valsabbina, and the CEO of Credimi, I think, is actually an advisor to the board of director of Unicredit. So maybe there is a pattern there where, people into, this big institution, the CNITs, they create startup around the concrete problem or interesting services that the bank need. And then maybe there is a combination that works to them. I'm really thinking positive here. I don't want to speculate anything controversial, but I thought it was curious to see this kind of match.
I don't know. Relationships, they help.
Yeah, they always help.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's talk about Satispay. So, the big stars of last year, essentially what they're doing is, as they announced, they're on a path to acquisition. So with the big fundraise from last year, they're really trying to evolve the model and to include different payment startup, different projects that actually amplify the portfolio and the offering of Satispay. So in this case, last week Satispay acquired a controlling stake in Onyon, restaurant payment startup. And growth by acquisition, something we've seen before. Very particular, very unique company. So essentially, Onyon is focused on the restaurant space in terms of ordering food and then paying and splitting the bill. So very unique, very very precise.
Yep, this is not the first acquisition they made in Satispay. So they started last year with this new trend of growing by acquiring other startups. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting because it creates liquidity in the market at least.
Totally.
So very very nice, very interesting.
Awesome.
Good. Let's see how this evolves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Last week there was an article about Satispay. So the other last week, 2 weeks ago, about Satispay eyeing the European fintech crown by basically implementing a growth strategy, growing city by city across Europe.
Oh wow, interesting.
Yeah. So they've been on the news quite a bit lately. So they're fresh off the capital raise from last year. So I think they will push forward quite heavily.
Yeah, talking about making the business international, let's talk about quickly Young Platform launching a service in France after getting the license from the French financial authority. So definitely it's a company that's been a little bit hit from this past months for sure, but this is a great sign. It's a great news. The guys are still reacting and evolving and hitting some new markets. So also congrats to them. It's definitely good news from their side.
Yeah, someone said, "Be bold when the other are afraid," something like that.
Oh yeah.
So considering how the crypto market is going, that's they are being bold. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think Coinbase had a hit on their valuation that was 70%.
Yeah, something like that.
because at the end of the day, the revenue lines are strictly related to the value of the cryptocurrency.
So not a nice moment for the industry for sure.
No, but very happy to see them bold and pushing forward by going international.
I agree.
Very nice.
Nick, all right. It was a short and sweet week. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jack, for leading, and see you in a week.